Lesson: Contracts and Human Rights Considerations. Contracts and human rights considerations have increasingly become intertwined in the modern legal landscape. This intersection presents numerous opportunities and challenges for legal professionals, particularly those specializing in contract law. The consideration of human rights within contractual agreements not only aligns with global ethical standards, but also enhances the robustness and sustainability of contractual relationships. To effectively navigate this complex area, legal professionals must adopt practical tools, frameworks, and strategies that ensure contractual obligations are fulfilled without infringing on human rights. By doing so, they can preempt potential legal disputes and foster more equitable business practices. At the core of integrating human rights considerations into contract law is the understanding that contracts are not just legal tools, but also instruments that can either uphold or violate human rights. This dual potential necessitates a conscientious approach to contract drafting and enforcement. One actionable insight is the adoption of the human rights due diligence framework, which involves assessing the potential human rights impacts of a contractual agreement prior to its finalization. This framework requires that parties conduct thorough impact assessments, identifying possible rights that may be affected by the contract's execution. Incorporating human rights clauses that reflect international standards, such as those outlined in the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, can further bolster this due diligence process. To effectively implement human rights considerations, legal professionals can utilize tools such as the Contractual Human Rights Assessment Matrix. This practical tool helps in systematically evaluating each clause of the contract against a set of human rights criteria. For instance, a supply contract could be assessed for compliance with labor rights, ensuring that subcontractors adhere to fair labor practices. By using the matrix, potential human rights violations can be identified and mitigated through specific contractual obligations, such as mandatory compliance with local labor laws or international labor standards. Real-world challenges often arise in the enforcement phase of contracts, where human rights considerations might be overlooked due to competing interests or pressures. To address this, the Human Rights Compliance Checklist serves as a practical tool that ensures ongoing compliance with human rights obligations throughout the contract's lifespan. This checklist provides a step-by-step guide for periodic reviews, audits, and stakeholder consultations, thereby fostering transparency and accountability in contractual relationships. Legal professionals can apply this tool in various contexts, such as in supply chain management, where regular audits of suppliers can ensure adherence to agreed-upon human rights standards. Case studies provide valuable insights into the application of these frameworks and tools. One illustrative example is the case of Doe v. Nestle, where the U.S. Supreme Court addressed allegations of human rights abuses in the cocoa supply chain. Despite the complexity of the case, it underscored the necessity for multinational corporations to incorporate human rights considerations into their contracts with suppliers to mitigate the risk of complicity in human rights violations. This case highlights the importance of proactive human rights due diligence and the potential legal repercussions of neglecting these considerations. Statistics further emphasize the relevance of human rights in contract law. According to a report by the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, over 50% of global companies have faced legal challenges related to human rights violations within their supply chains in the past decade. This data underscores the growing legal and reputational risks associated with failing to integrate human rights considerations into contracts. By employing the aforementioned tools and frameworks, legal professionals can better safeguard their clients against such risks. Another critical aspect of addressing human rights in contracts is the negotiation phase. Legal professionals must be adept at negotiating terms that not only protect their clients' interests, but also uphold human rights standards. Utilizing the interest-based negotiation framework can be particularly effective in this context. This approach focuses on the underlying interests of the parties rather than their positions, fostering mutually beneficial outcomes. By identifying shared values and interests related to human rights, parties can craft agreements that reflect both ethical standards and business objectives. The application of these strategies is not limited to corporate contracts, but extends to government contracts as well. Governments are increasingly incorporating human rights clauses into public procurement contracts, reflecting a commitment to ethical sourcing and sustainable development. Legal professionals working with government entities can leverage the Public Procurement and Human Rights Toolkit, which provides guidance on integrating human rights criteria into procurement processes. This toolkit outlines steps for drafting tender documents, evaluating bids, and monitoring contract performance with a focus on human rights compliance. In conclusion, the integration of human rights considerations into contract law is both a legal necessity and an ethical imperative. By adopting practical tools and frameworks, such as the Human Rights Due Diligence Framework, the Contractual Human Rights Assessment Matrix, and the Human Rights Compliance Checklist, legal professionals can effectively navigate the complexities of this emerging topic. These tools enable the identification and mitigation of potential human rights violations, ensuring that contractual relationships are not only legally sound, but also ethically responsible. The use of case studies, statistics, and negotiation strategies further enhances the ability of legal professionals to address real-world challenges and promote human rights through contract law. As the global legal landscape continues to evolve, the proactive incorporation of human rights considerations into contracts will remain a crucial component of modern contract law practice.